Brilliant. That's a good start. Right, I've got an esteemed panel, and I'm going to get to the situation. Sorry, who am I talking to? So, Samira, wonderful lady, wonderful sense of humour, and she is working for Diageo, and therefore you know why she's got such a good sense of humour, is in such a good mood all the time. And then we have with us Anthony. Anthony makes sure that if Samira is not laughing, he's causing us to laugh. So he's got a wonderful sense of humour as well. So I think we're going to have a little bit of fun today. The most important thing we're going to do is to discuss the challenge in the boardroom. Why does it not work as well as it logically should do? My name is Sharon Constançon. I'm Chief Exec of Genius Boards, and we spend our lives in everybody's boardroom. These two spend time in their organisation's boardroom. So we're going to get some insights from them of the sorts of challenges they have, and I'll share with you some of the challenges I see in many environments very frequently. And if we've achieved our objective by the end of today, you'll have a few nuggets and some tools in your kit box that are going to ensure that your board does not do what all boards do and fall into the trap of not actually challenging very effectively. So, a big ask that we have that we're going to share with everyone today. So, one of the things I noticed while I was preparing my thoughts ahead of this moment was one of the things that boards really struggle with is the inclusivity of diversity. They get diversity, well, at a technical level. Whether they get it further than that is obviously quite broad and quite questionable. But the issue is, are they inclusive of that diversity? Do they lead? Do they chair that diversity to gain the value that they need to gain? So one of the things I would like to start with is you have three people of diversity. We've got good gender, and we've got good ethnicity diversity, and we've also got global origin diversity amongst all of us here. So we actually are three people with some fairly good diversity. So turning to that diversity, can I maybe ask you closer to me? So I'll start here and I'll come to you, Samira. Is what are the kinds of diversity challenges have you seen in the boardrooms, and how does that impact the ability of NEDs to be able to be effectively challenging?
Good. Yeah, it's good. So I've been in a number of different boardrooms. Where I've seen diversity not work is when you can have what visually looks like a diverse group of people, but actually there isn't diverse of thought or diversity of background or anything like that. So actually everyone is still thinking the same, even though they look significantly different. Where I am now at the studios, we have, and I should just differentiate, I don't deal with the BBC main board, I deal with BBC's commercial board, so it's the fun board. We're making the programmes and having fun. But we have a truly diverse board. We have people who are of different backgrounds, races, gender, the kit and caboodle. But that's how you make it work. Because when you have people who are diverse on paper but not anything else, i.e. there's no diversity of thoughts, like I was saying at the beginning, you end up with just conversations going around in the circle. People end up agreeing with each other because actually there's no jeopardy, there's no difference in thought. That's, for me, is the problem.
And in your side, in the Diageo environment, what kind of diversity challenges or inclusivity challenges might you have seen? And if so, has it impacted any of the decision making that's been occurring?
Not specifically actually at Diageo, but just in my experience.
Can we speak up as loud as you can? You and I've got hair.
Can you hear me?
That's outrageous. I can grow hair, I choose to shave it.
Yeah, I was just saying that, so just in my experience generally, I think where I see some barriers or challenges in that area is around newly joining the board or being underprepared or somewhat quote-unquote a baby led. And so that gives you something to feel like their voices are not heard, their voices are not seen. When a board, like a few board members have been together for a very long time, you can notice a bit of synergy and like camaraderie amongst them. But when new board members come in, it's a bit like they still have to understand how the board actually works, the culture, and things like that. So you can sometimes in the boardroom see a bit of hesitation or fear. And I think this is where it's really important to say that the constructive challenge in the boardroom is actually underpinned by some psychological safety first, and then from there you can actually build out how a board can work.
So what we're looking for from a chairman is an inclusivity culture and a safe culture,
Yeah.
which we'll cover, and hopefully we'll have time to get to that area of the questioning. I had an experience working with the Financial Services Board where they had many diversities, one human. First female, first much younger, first female, much younger, non-financial services person who came from the retail sector. And they had done this because post the crash, that's what the regulator insisted, that we put the customer in the middle of the business. So they did it. But what they didn't realize is every single one of those male, pale and stale directors who'd been there, mostly getting close to their 9 years, actually didn't know what to do with this person. They didn't know how to be inclusive. So one of the things that I would like to share with the company secretaries here is bring diversity, but train those that are there already to receive that diversity, particularly your chairman. It's a good start. Had a chat to this chairman, he said, "What are you telling me? You're telling me I'm not being inclusive?" I said, "No, you literally turn your back on this person." It's absolutely awful, and by the way, at this rate, she's leaving at the end of the assessment because nobody's listening to her. She did her full 9 years. Well, last I spoke to her, she was in year 7. She'll do her full 9 years. So it just goes to show that quite often board directors don't realize what they're doing wrong. They don't intend it, but the outcome is it's there. And I think the lesson is for the COSEC is you need eyes in all your 6 senses. You need all your senses working.
Yes, and there is something around the induction for the chair, for the board members, for new board members, and around you don't want to patronise directors because every experienced board director knows what it is to be a board director. So you need to have a sort of a fine balance. But there is something about giving them what we call a deep dive on this thing or a deep dive on that thing, which is really just a way to up their skill set or refresh their skill set in a particular area. And I think that's the sort of thing you're talking about that you can add in or tack on that will help ensure that they're all at the same level.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo that actually, and I think from a PLC perspective as well, I'm sure John also would agree, a lot of the board members sit on different boards as well. So sometimes just because it works for A PLC doesn't mean it will work for B PLC. So again, this induction program, workshops, informal connections with other team members is highly important for people to just connect in that way before they actually get to the boardroom.
Yeah. And I do agree with you there. The suggestions I often make to company secretaries is when you're getting in 1, 2 or 3 new board directors, whatever number it is, doesn't matter, that when that person does either a bit of training, or they go on a site visit, or they have an in-house meeting with the finance director or whoever else it is, have an existing NED with the new NED, because then you've got old eyes, new eyes, both looking at the same thing. It's like going to a pantomime, you see a very different story. And it honestly, if anything, it helps the old director more than the new director. The new director is not feeling like they're a bit overwhelmed, and they can ask the existing director quite straightforward questions that they may feel uncomfortable to ask the person who's taking them walk around the walls kind of story. So that can help. One of the things that I see in boardrooms quite often is, and I'm going to give 3 words, they're all slightly different, so we can talk to the differences. Bias, influence, and hobby horses. These things can derail conversations, and more importantly than the conversations, you can get the conversation back on track, but do we come to the right answer in a decision-making process because of these elements? And I have seen circumstances where I wouldn't say the chairman was in control of the debate or the conversation or anything. Anything you'd like to add or share that you, or give a nugget of experience? What should a COSEC do under these circumstances when you see this present?
Okay. I always sit next to my chair so that I can whisper, write things down, nudge him or whatever. And sometimes we will have a little eye communication or whatever that we need to get that person off that particular subject. The hobby horses one is a critical one for us because we have a couple of people who have particular hobby horses, and that's fine, and that is absolutely fine. You know, everyone has their own particular area of expertise or interest and skills. Absolutely, so I'm not knocking it. And in fact, all 3 things can be used both positively and negatively. It's only when they're overplayed that they become negative. So sometimes it's actually useful throwing that grenade in and hoping that someone picks up with their hobby horse and they can lead that topic. So it's just a matter of how you choose to use it. We've got a really experienced chair for commercial, so actually he can spot these things a mile off, which is really helpful. But as I say, they are both positive and negative, and it's just a matter of how they're deployed.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, Anthony. And just to add to that as well, I think for my chair, we usually have a briefing paper person for him about like items that are coming to the board, and with that we have conversations prior to the meeting, just talk through things, and sometimes these informal conversations come up. But equally, we also have like a debriefing paper as well, where we just sit with him and just talk about how the meeting actually went, and then highlight some of these things. You just say, you know, like, A, is it quiet, or did you show engagement in this particular topic and things like that, so that he's aware of the coming meetings, he can probably probe and say, what do you think about this? Because I feel like some people just need that extra push to have a conversation because it might be they don't have experience in that area.
Yeah.
And you do have the introvert in the boardroom, they do exist, I've had one, and they've got extremely good points to make, but they will not say a word unless you ask them. So that's where the COSEC can train the chair to encourage, at the right point, knowing they know their directors well enough, they will know at what point to encourage that person out of their cave to give the good value content at the right point in time. It's like being the conductor of an orchestra. You've got to bring the right people in at the right time.
It's important actually for organisations, for CEOs, for executives to recognise the value that the company secretary can have in the boardroom, because actually we are sat there, maybe minuting, maybe someone else is minuting. Actually, we are watching everyone. We're seeing everything, and we're the one person who's probably got the most, let's say, impartial view.
Yes.
Least ego or less biased view. And we can see, well, actually, this person was trying to make that point, but it wasn't very clear, and that's the reason why that happened, and so on. So you can almost retell what happened during that board meeting. But it's important for the executive to get that too, because that's their link to the chair, to the meeting, to the other net.
To the answers they want, to the paper they produce. You and I were chatting yesterday, and you were talking about the company secretary prepares the papers. They put them all together, they know the company inside out, they know where the soft spot is in this place, they know where the little gremlin's hiding. And then you, in the meeting, you're sitting there doing your typical COSEC job, which is not saying a lot. and you think, why are they not asking this question? Please tell us how you feel, and sitting as a COSEC in front of these COSECs, how would we advise these COSECs not to just be neutral observers? How do we change this?
I think for me, one key thing is actually revitalising our agenda put to the board. And I don't know about your organisation, but the ones that I've worked in, sometimes it's just a load of a lot in your agenda. And I think it's really important to really decipher exactly what needs to go to the board rather than bombard them with a lot of information. And then that way they take the time to actually read what is being put to them, in other words, ask the right questions in the board meeting. That is something that at Diageo I would say we're definitely working on to try and make sure. I think there's a lot that just needs to go to the board or just needs to be on the agenda, but it's not a tick-box exercise. We actually need to make sure that the right things are coming to the board and the right conversation.
Right conversation.
Do you have a page limit or a page guide?
We don't.
We do. We have a chair who is, oh, don't give me all those pages. So we have a page guide in not for everything, as some things obviously need to be longer than others, but it focuses.
How many?
6. That was a negotiation with the chair who started at 4.
What was it called?
The number. So it used to be whatever the number was, then it became 6. And we've landed, and it's 6, and it is a cover page, an exec sum, and 5. And it doesn't matter if it's PowerPoint slides, tablets of stone, it's still only 6. Per report, yeah.
It would be nice to have more people only 6 pages.
Now that could be, now obviously some things might need appendices or whatever in there in the back, and obviously these I'm sure we're all using sort of electronic packs, so you can have other information and supporting, but that's really what we're saying is those 6 pages are the 6 pages that the director must read, and that's where all the information really needs to be. Everything else is nice to have.
What we recommend to boards is that the pack is made up of 3 components. The one is the directors will read that, it is their fiduciary duty. The rest is a more broader content that relates to it, that if they read it, it's because of their own interest or they're looking for an answer instead of asking a stupid question. It would be nice if they did that. And then you have all the Excel spreadsheets, the detailed numbers and everything, the third part. But there are 3 distinct parts, with the assumption is the board director has to do the first part.
Absolutely.
And if the writer, author, has not got everything in there, it's their responsibility for not informing the board appropriately.
Correct.
Do not assume that they have got the time and the capacity to go into 1,000 pages, because actually they won't do any job right least of all this one. So I think we are all in agreement. So hopefully there's a nugget in there that you can take back.
I'm liking the heckling, by the way, the shouting. I'm liking that. You've given us an example. You say things don't typically go wrong in your environments. But can either of you think of an example where the depth of challenge has stopped too soon, either for reasons of being a standoff, being defensive, not having the content, not asking the right question, not delving into the question? Have you ever seen it get to the wrong decision, or does this decision not happen yet? What tends to go wrong? Maybe Samira, you could give us something first.
I haven't personally experienced.
Oh, you're a lucky lady.
Yeah, lucky me. Maybe is it to come? I don't know.
Wow, let's hope it's not to come. I've seen a quick decision in a previous board quite some time ago, but it was a quick decision based on scant information, but they were advised by the person speaking now that they didn't actually have the authority to do what they wanted to do. It was not in their constitution, but they were they were sort of gung-ho and decided that they wanted to go ahead and make this decision, which then later had to be overturned because they just didn't have the authority to do it. And I think that is sometimes because either people are, it was a charity board and they didn't necessarily understand their responsibilities, or they sort of thought that they're sort of nice to have things. I think they were just inexperienced as a cohort, really.
I saw a circumstance of a FTSE 250 board where there were some issues around a certain area of the business and its profitability and its returns, and there was therefore some question as to whether the existing CEO of that division of the business was fit for purpose. This is a big show, this is a big conversation. And the board were not unanimous on their view on whether the CEO was fit for purpose or not. Net result, it took them 3 years to make a decision by the chairman forcing one of them to please just vote yes, because at the moment I'm not passing unless I get 100% yes vote. So therefore you've got inappropriate chairing. It took 3 years. The company's no longer a FTSE 250. I think that says it all. So there are circumstances where a non-decision is a decision, and what are the consequences of that as well as decisions.
Isn't there a story about a FTSE 100 that's not a FTSE 100 anymore that made a decision quickly, but it wasn't really the board, it was the chair making the decision to pay a particular bonus. I'll go into the real details of it, it becomes more obvious, but to pay a bonus to the CEO, and then they then had to deal with the fallout from shareholders because they hadn't actually got it approved by the shareholders either. But they were trying to solve what I think was one problem in terms of retention, but actually in the end the CEO also left. So actually they didn't resolve the retention issue, it was just a mess. But that again is quick decision making, but done the wrong way.
And not following the governance
Correct.
Process, which is exactly what you meant.
And just to add to what you said, Sharon, I think it's important to know that silence at the boardroom doesn't necessarily mean agreement.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people won't say
yeah, it actually disengagement too. People are just actually not. So I think as context, back to your point about observation, it's our role to actually discern what is actually happening in the room and pull your chair or CEO up about it.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then they say, well, does everyone agree? And 2 people out of 7 say yes, and the rest are silent. That is not passing the vote. So,
No,
and that's teaching, that's training your chair.
I think good chairs will go around the room and make sure that everyone has...
And then the one who disagreed just...
Well, that's where the discussion will be.
Which should be. So yes, you get people going into group decisions rather than group think, rather than having their head over the parapet and saying, I disagree. I have seen directors being told, you don't fit in here, so I suggest you walk the plank with the sword, wherever else, the deep water, the sharks, because you are putting up too much challenge.
Wow.
And that is not a good outcome either. So I've seen a lot of boards, so I have a lot of experience. I'm going to ask some just closing questions because we are going to have to close in a moment. I want to open the floor to them question, but let's us close first before we do that. So you hopefully have got a nugget or 2 scribbled down in your AI brain, but somewhere that you can take back to your office. What is your nugget to the audience and its scenarios?
What in terms of...
What's the key thing then to take back to the destiny, better company secretaries, in terms of focusing on delivering challenge in the boardroom?
So look, I think if you have the capability to be able to do this, the ideal is that it comes from the chair. It's you speaking to the chair, it's you engaging with the chair when you're recruiting it's you engaging with the business when you're recruiting a new chair. You should be involved in all of those things. And the truth of the matter is, if you are, you can then influence the recruitment, the onboarding, the induction, the briefing for not just the chair, but for the board, for the rest of the board. So for me, it's the company secretary as the creator of the board.
Also, choosing the right personality, because you have a very different eye on how people are going to fit in than a chair or a CEO who might be picking a personality because they're quite forthright, for example. What is yours?
I think that off the back of everything else you said, I think my idea would be don't wait for a crisis, navigate a challenge while the stakes are lower and the habit can form.
Yeah,
brilliant.
That would be mine.
And my little nugget is when you've worked out that you are going to challenge, well, a director works out they are going to challenge on something. What I would coach as the co-sec to that director and build relationships with all the directors in the chain, not just that one, but actually just saying to the individual is, you've done some research, you've been perplexed, you've considered this, you've had a journey, and you've got to a question. Don't expect the receiver of the question to be in the same place. They're still back where you began. So I would always, as a co-sec, coach your directors to ooch the question. Ooch means take it in little small bites. So ask one question, delve a bit deeper, ask a second question, bring the individual, the board along with you, and then you come in with the actual key issue you are trying to get to. And doing that, I think, will reduce the defensiveness that we tend to see in some boardroom environments. But that has to come from the company secretary, not in board meeting, but it's training, coaching, working with your directors so that you build a relationship with them, you support them to be the best director they can be, and actually be their conscience, be there that when they are in an awkward position, they feel safe to come back to you. And I think that is also really, it's a long-term build and a long-term solution in terms of getting the board to feel safe to think independently.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're also aiming for. Any last point you want to add before I
No, I'm desperate to know because I can see we've got lots of questions. Well, hopefully we have.
We have.
Right.
Yeah.
We've got questions.
Do you want me to jump up and I will?
I leave you to ask position.
Well, Sharon, it's one of those situations, the Slido goes up and I'm thinking there's not many questions coming in, and the Slido thing goes up and suddenly there's a flood. You've touched a nerve, I think, for some people. But so I'm going to throw these out there, answer them as quickly as possible. We've got about 5 minutes to go through questions. Any specific advice about managing dominant chairman? You talked a lot about the importance of that relationship with the co-sec. You sit next to the chair, which is great, and you can pass the notes. What if you've got a dominant chair? Have you got any experience of that?
Yeah. That's why I sit next to him. It's about building a relationship, not just in the boardroom. It's about having regular catch-ups, phone calls, being able to just phone each other and not be just waiting for 5 minutes before the board meeting. It's about relationship building, and that's how you can then say, do you think maybe you were a bit hard on that during that bit of the meeting? Or, you can have those conversations. But you can't do that if you don't have a relationship with the chair in the first place.
Yeah. And if the chair is a bit of a toxic personality, I don't know if you want to because that's the problem.
Oh no, you can't do that?
No, they have to do that. It's very...
Yeah, I think today we have a job to do, and I think the concept, we are in a really unique position as well, because the chair is also looking to us, like the way we also look into them to navigate the boardroom. So I think, similar to what Anthony said, it's building that rapport outside of the boardroom as well. After the meeting's over, go over, check in, maybe things maybe slightly personal as well, maybe talk about going to play tennis or something, and then from that it can lead into, those are some of the things that kind of break the ice with people just generally. He's a human being, or he or she's a human being at the end of the day, and can break the ice and people just start to peel those layers as well, and you can get in there, and have those conversations.
And I think the other thing is to help the chair understand that the meeting is not the place for them to lead it, it's the place for them to chair the meeting. And if they get it in their mind that their ego and all the things that they want to do, or their toxic personality is outside the boardroom, in the boardroom they are chairing an effective meeting. And that is, I'm not talking about your ego, ma'am, sir, I'm asking you to chair the meeting. And obviously use all the right EQ language, as we know we have to.
I suspect this next question is less of an issue these days than it might have been 20 years ago, but what if the chair has got outside heads who are kind of tame, who are mates, or they've got a relationship outside that environment, and so effectively they don't have to leave the meeting because they've got proxies in the room who are doing it for them. Those political questions can be a bit tricky, can't they?
Yeah, I don't really have that because, as I said, in terms of the recruitment, of recruiting people who aren't connected in that way, so yeah, I don't.
This feels like one of those questions that's particularly pertinent to smaller quotas or even private companies.
I have seen it in the Legal National Financial Services Organisation, where the board had been broken down into cliques, and you had relationships between two people particularly, and then a different relationship between one of them and somebody else. And it was completely toxic, it was completely manipulated, and it was a very difficult environment for the board to get it right. They did eventually, but it did take the regulator to get involved to actually help get it right.
One of the questions coming here about when you've got someone who's coming in, so the actual question is, any advice on managing a NED that doesn't engage outside of the meeting, so not necessarily open to building that relationship that you guys have been talking about, but dive straight into challenge during the meeting. That's, again, that sounds like quite a specific example, but surprising NEDs, let's put it that way, to broaden it out to people when you're suddenly encountering a situation where you're not sure where it's coming from.
Yeah, haven't personally experienced that, but I think for me it's important to build again rapport, trust outside of the boardroom. And in an organisation like Diageo, we have these informal dinners for the board, informal get-togethers, and sometimes even off-site as well, so we go to some of our distilleries and things like that. So taking the director outside of what is normal, what is unique to them, and then that way people just break the ice. Sort of informally and officially as well. It kind of works when you see these, when you see them in the boardroom and you see them outside of the boardroom. They connect differently.
I think it's hard. I think it's really hard not to break things down if you're doing that with them. If there's things happening outside of the boardroom that they really have to engage with.
I was going to say, if they're resistant to that kind of engagement, that's probably quite a big red flag anyway.
Yeah, that's probably that's sort of getting them to the end of their term quite quickly, I would have thought.
I think our board, for instance, like board attendance, everybody tries to attend the meetings, tries to be a part of it. Nobody wants to be left out. You get that sometimes things happen, but we usually get good attendance. People just want to be there.
But a lot of that behaviour is coming out of fear or ego. And it's then, as the COSEC, working with that individual to understand which ends of that spectrum it is, and helping them, guide them, to say, what the unintended consequence of the way you are approaching it is causing this. It's not really what you want, is it? So let's rephrase, let's help rephrase your questions or your style, and you'll be their best friend quite quickly.
You've been talking very eloquently, all of you, about fostering challenge in the boardroom and that kind of constructive challenge, particularly around non-execs. We've got a final question here as we come up to time, which is a slightly different way of introducing challenge, which is how do you push back against the filibustering director or the one who has endless requests for information and wants to talk the meeting to death. That's a sort of challenge actually to the effective functioning of the board. How do you challenge that kind of behaviour? Is there a particular approach you go for?
There is a chair. I mean, that is for the chairman to deal with. And once it's happened once and it's happened twice, you know that person is going to do that again. And it either requires, well, it probably requires a conversation outside the board meeting. We have some unwritten style, a sort of unwritten style guide about everyone has an equal voice. And that is a way of working for us. So no one person can hold the floor for too long because everyone has an equal voice.
Another rule is 3 minutes. And the chair has permission to say, you've done 3 minutes.
Tap the table.
And we're 3 minutes over.
Well, I'm going to throw one more question to the final because it's just rolled in, and I think it's too good to ignore. And we don't have to move. Everyone's got to.
Oh yeah, okay. Come on in.
You can hear the end of our session.
The party.
And it's a good one. It's how do you deal with the boardroom gossip?
Yeah, I think it's just trying to be part of it.
Yeah.
I think as the co-sec you need to understand that it's there, what is the use of harming, what is the desired outcome. So in other words, where's the influence, where's the bully, where's the personal agenda. And as a co-sec you've got all the EQ in the world. You can actually get to the bottom of those things. And you can have the quiet conversation when you see somebody and have the conversation with them. You can negate it. You can't end it. I know one boardroom I was working with, the chair and the SID would phone each other on their long distance drive home after the board meeting, and you know what was going on. But yes, I've seen it.
Fantastic. Actually, just a very quick final one then, since they're still filtering in. You mentioned SIDS there. There was one question that came in about positive experiences with the senior independent director, because obviously we've been talking a lot about the chair relationship, but that SID can be a quite a useful ally for the co-sec.
But I think it's the same thing again about relationships. I'm trying to foster good relationships with each individual member of the board. So I'm talking about the chairman, that's what we're talking about today. But actually I'm trying to ensure that I've got a relationship, because there'll be times I'll need to lean on each individual director for something different. So I need to have a relationship with all of them. And that's why, back to the previous question about gossip, I'm not interested in gossip, because that starts to make me slightly partisan to this faction or that faction, and I need to be able to glide across the top and be able to have a relationship equally with everyone.
Yeah, I think it's a collective responsibility, and everyone has to lean in, and you also have to lean on other people as well. I just want to add one more point again, which is what we discussed earlier on training and induction. And I think once we get net in, sometimes training induction can take a back seat, but it's a continuous, letting them know obviously emerging trends and things like that, but also some critical thinking skills, negotiation skills, how to, be in the boardroom, how to be there, and things like that are sometimes a good refresher for some of your members as well to help them remember. Did I have to name that meeting? Is it okay to say this? And things like that.
Yeah.
Through a case study, you can diffuse their behaviours or recognise it.
Excellent, thank you. Splendid final panel to see us through to our final keynote, and Anthony, I'll come on to the appropriateness of what you've just said, but Sharon, Anthony, Samira, thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you.